Namaskar. After already almost 2 years of living through pandemic and now with the war, a lot of people are suffering from anxiety. And I've had a lot of people come and ask me how to overcome it, how to deal with anxiety. And so today I'm going to share with you how to master anxiety by looking at it on 3 different levels. We're going to look at it on the physical manifestation, on our mind and mental stress, and then also on the spiritual level. And what are the resources that we have on all 3 of these levels to be able to really overcome the effects of anxiety, to free our mind from that sensation of anxiety. So the first level is physical. And this is maybe the easiest to access. And yet so often, especially when we're caught in the state of anxiety, we are really disconnected from our physical presence. We tend to get really focused in our thoughts, in our mind, and disconnected from the body. And so by developing the ability to detach, by developing the ability to observe and to notice what's happening on the physical level, this is already a big step towards being able to master anxiety. It's to first notice how it's affecting you, to be able to feel the sensations. Where do you feel it? Do you feel a tightness in your stomach? Do you feel a tightness in your chest? Do you feel something blocked in your throat? No? So these are often areas that will be sensitive to manifestations of anxiety. And so the first thing is to notice those first symptoms, before they become overwhelming, and to be able to relax with that. Not for it to trigger even more anxiety, but just to be able to observe it, to watch it. And not only that, to be able to start to soften it, to be able to start to open it and relax it through. The main instrument here is going to be, the main resource that we have is going to be the breath. And so by noticing the tension that gets created as we start to enter into a state of anxiety, if we are able to deepen our breathing, soften the belly, and use a full diaphragmatic breathing, full belly breathing, this already is going to go a long way to dissolving some of that tension on the physical level. Because as you activate that deeper breathing, you're activating the relaxation reflex, and you are helping literally your brain, your nervous system, to get the message that it's safe and it's okay to let go. So you're reprogramming your response just by changing your breathing rate, slowing it down, softening it, and deepening it. This is already a huge step to be able to master our emotions rather than to let our emotions master us. But there's more. That's not the only thing that you can do. So then there's the level of our thoughts, of our thinking patterns. So I like the expression that it is not things that actually upset us or make us anxious. It's the interpretation that we give to those things, to those events, to those situations. So the way we look at things, the way that we see things, can either generate compassion, understanding, acceptance, or it can generate tension, stress, anger, anxiety. So anxiety is one of those patterns of thinking. What happens? What's happening to our mind when we get caught into anxiety? Well, often what's happening is that we're trying to control things that usually can't be controlled. Or we're getting very anxious about the fact that there's things that we can't control. And it makes us feel helpless and that things are unpredictable. And it's unpredictability. And it's when things get unstable and overwhelming, that tends to trigger all kinds of anxiety. So how can we reframe things? How can we direct our mind so that we are directing our mind away from thoughts that provoke these states of anxiety and towards states of peace, acceptance, power, courage, resources that will help us to overcome anxiety instead of just getting caught in an endless loop of it. Because as you think, so you become. The more that we focus on things that provoke anxiety and fear, the bigger those fears and anxiety become. The best way to overcome fear is usually to face what you're afraid of, because the more that you avoid it, the more that you try to keep it away, the bigger that it grows. But the moment when you actually take a step to overcome the fear, it starts to release some of its hold on you. And also, like people who have an extraordinary anxiety or fear about snakes, one of the techniques that was developed was to expose the person, rather than them spending, so much of their mental energy in this anxiety and not being able to, it might even affect the way they live their lives, to instead to expose them in a safe situation in which they had a degree of control over how much exposure was tolerable, but to expose them to a big serpent that somebody was handling in a way that was safe and nothing bad happened. And so by, allowing them to wear all kinds of protective gear and to only gradually get closer and closer, eventually when the person was desensitized to their fear in this safe situation, with somebody with experience that knew how to handle the snake, they were even able to get to the level of handling it themselves. And then when they were free from that phobia, from that strong grip of that fear, it had a liberating influence on their entire being. Because these types of fears and anxieties can consume enormous resources of our psychic energy. And so when we're able to overcome them, it is a freedom, it is a release, and it tends to free up resources in our mind on many levels, not just on the apparent level of, snakes, but it leads to a greater sense of freedom and mastery over life in general, and more self-confidence. So yes, the more that we avoid, the more that the fear grows. And so finding ways to take small baby steps, but to approach whatever it is that's causing us anxiety, and to have successful experiences of mastering that thing, that's an important step. So not just giving in to fear, not making it, not amplifying it, not magnifying it, not catastrophizing things, but to actively try to work with your mind by taking the opposite stance. So like if the mind is tending to go into fear and into anxiety, you can use auto-suggestion to notice those patterns. Again, if you're developing the power of your mind to direct your thinking at will in positive directions through meditation and spiritual practice, this will become easier, because every time you sit to meditate, you have to withdraw your mind from all kinds of distracting influences and be able to direct it where you want it to go, towards positive source of, in the meditation I teach, towards thinking about that source of love, infinite peace that is the very ground of reality. So that's going to take us into the spiritual level too. But on the mental level, we need to develop that strength, that ability to overcome impulses, to not allow our mind just to run wherever direction it wants, but to be able to focus it and take it in positive directions. That's a particular type of mental strength, mental power. And that's exactly what meditation is designed to develop. Because through the exercise of developing your ability to concentrate on a mantra and not just allow the mind to freely float all over the place, you're developing the ability to notice and detach from all the other patterns of thinking that you have. So as you sit and meditate, you'll see your mind starts to wander. And just by noticing that wandering, as you take it back to the point of concentration, you're developing that strength. You're developing that ability to be able to direct and control your mind so that it's not just taking you on a ride. So this is now going to take us into the last level of resource, which is spiritual resource. And this is perhaps the most powerful level for truly overcoming anxiety in a much deeper and more permanent way. So I was talking earlier about how one of the sources of anxiety is our attempt to control things that can't always be controlled. So I think that here the serenity prayer has a lot to offer us. So this is a prayer that goes like this: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two. So it's not just about accepting absolutely everything that happens. No, it's about accepting those things that are beyond my power to change. And at the same time, to not avoid the things that I can change, because a lot of confidence and a sense of personal power comes when we are able to develop the courage to do things that might even be beyond our comfort zone, that might be difficult, that might be hard. But when we develop the courage to influence the things that are within our circle of our sphere of influence, this is also an important thing for being able to overcome anxiety, because when we do what we can, we are not powerless. We are owning our own power. We are owning what we can do. I have a beautiful Buddhist story to illustrate this concept. So there was once a forest, and in this forest there was a beautiful parrot and many, many animals of the forest. And one day there was a great fire, and the trees were engulfed in flames, and all of the animals were running to save themselves. And the little parrot, she was able to fly, so she flew high above the flames, and she flew and flew until she reached a river. And there she was able to, soothe her singed feathers and cool herself in the water. And there she noticed there were a few animals around, an elephant and a few other animals that had reached the water as well, but they were just sitting and watching the fire destroy the forest. She flew again high into the air, thinking to flee further. But as she looked back, she saw that there were other animals that had remained trapped in the forest and they couldn't escape. They didn't have wings to fly above the flames, and the flames were surrounding them on all sides. And these were her friends. She couldn't just leave them like that. So she went back to the river and she dipped her wings into the river and she flew back into the fire. And now when she reached over the flames in the area where the animals were trapped, she started to shake her wings. And like that, a few drops of water showered into the flames. And of course, tiny drops of water, they just hissed and evaporated. But she didn't give up. She went back to the water, to the river, again dipped her wings into the water, rose above the flames, flew back into the fire, and shook her wings. And this kept going on and on. The other animals watched her in disbelief, and they didn't understand what the point was of just a few drops of water. And they said, "Why are you doing that? It's not going to make any difference." And she said, "Well, I'm doing what I can." And so she flew back into the flames. Meanwhile, high above all of this fire, in a realm of divinity, there were different entities there, different divinities, different gods and goddesses enjoying their meal and eating sweets. And they looked down from afar and they saw this scene and they started to laugh. What an absurd thing. I mean, that little bird, she's never going to put out the fire. What is she doing? And some of them started to laugh. but one of them didn't laugh. He watched the bird and he was strangely moved. And he transformed himself into a great eagle and he flew down to her. And he said, "Little parrot, save yourself. Your task is hopeless. You will never put out this fire with just a few drops of water." By now, her lungs were full of smoke and she was coughing and her wingtips were getting singed from the flames. She said, I don't need some great eagle to tell me that to save myself. I said, even my dear mother could have told me so much. What I need now is not advice. I just need someone to help. And so she went back and she got more water and she said, I am just doing what I can. And she shook the water into the flames again. The eagle felt touched and maybe ashamed, seeing the courage of this little bird and when he had such great divine powers. And so tears started to well up in his eyes. And as they overflowed and rolled down his cheeks, they turned into a magical rainfall. And so rain just began pouring and pouring and pouring onto the forest. And the birds the little parrot started to dance and swirl around. Yes, that's more like it, she said. And like this, the rain actually put out the fire. And the other animals also started to take the water from the river. The elephant brought it in his trunk and also threw the water into the flames. And now everybody was working together to put out the fire. And soon the fire was put out and all the animals that were trapped were freed. So when things are overwhelming, it's easy to get frozen in fear. It's easy to feel powerless and helpless. And this amplifies our sense of anxiety when we feel powerless. But taking the example of the brave little parrot, finding even small little drops of water that we can do, it gives us the power of doing what we can. So doing what you can, having the courage to change what you can, that is one of the secrets also to serenity and peace. It's to accept what you can't change, but also to find the courage to do what you can, and to develop the wisdom to discern the difference between those two. So a big part of achieving serenity and freeing yourself from anxiety is to learn the art of letting go. In yoga, it's called surrender, to being able to let go and trust the divine. Now, it's hard to trust unless you have a relationship. So again, we come back to spiritual practice, because what is spiritual practice? It is the practice of connecting to your spirit, connecting deep inside to that source of love, to that source of power, to that source of peace. And when that connection gets stronger and stronger, every time that you meditate, learning and practicing the ability to let go of other superfluous thoughts and feelings and emotions, and to direct the mind to stay connected to its source, that the very ground of your existence, the very fundamental essence that defines deeply your being, is this state or consciousness of peace and of an infinite form of divine love. And when that's radiating from you, that creates and generates a state of unshakable peace, an unshakable sense of trust that you're not alone, that there is a force of good in the world, and you are aligning yourself with it. You become a conduit for it. It flows through you. And so that force for good, when you're part of it, that takes away all fear. And where there's no fear, anxiety is only a kind of smaller manifestation, lighter manifestation of fear relatively. So where there's no fear, when you feel that force, that power of the universe, that you're aligned with it, that you're rooted in it, that it is protecting you, surrounding you, inspiring you, moving through you, it brings an enormous feeling of security and hope and positivity. And that's ultimately the ultimate, like I said, permanent, deepest resource that we have to overcome and master anxiety in our lives, is to deal with it not only on the physical level, through being able to let go of tension, to be able to breathe deeply, to activate our reflexes of relaxation on the neurological level. This helps. Also, to be able to control our thoughts and our thinking, not to feed negative patterns, not even to worry too much where they come from. You don't have to do deep analysis of why do I have this fear? Why do I have this anxiety? Because when you do that, what you're actually doing is focusing more on it. And as you think, so you become. So the more you focus on it, the more it grows. So learning the art of reframing, being able to see the positive sides of things, to be able to redirect the mind away from unwanted thoughts towards positive ones, develop the strength that comes from meditating in order to be able to do this. And then spiritually, to be able to ground yourself and root yourself deeply in divine love as the ultimate reality and truth of existence and our being. And when you have that alignment, you will become free of all fear. And it's really not something so far away and difficult to achieve that only a few people can achieve. No, this freedom from fear and this ability to stay connected and grounded, it's something that comes even within the first months of meditation practice. It grows and grows and matures and becomes strong, of course, the more that you practice it. But the first sign of spiritual growth is simply when you know that nothing that's happening is just coincidence, and that you're deeply guided, and that you are not alone in this universe, that there is a force that guides you. So with that, I hope that you will be inspired to learn and practice meditation and to develop your spiritual strength in this way. I invite you to join the free meditation course that I've created that has 10 lessons, basic lessons, to really get you started practically in integrating meditation, overcoming all of the usual obstacles. So if you look below this video, you will find in the comments all of the links that you need to get started. And I hope that you will like, subscribe, and grow and flourish spiritually and free yourself from any kind of anxiety that is haunting you. Thank you so much. Namaskar.